Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and with this video, I'll be discussing my thoughts on Season 2, Episode 3 of the Orville, entitled Home. And I both loved and loathed this episode, and not for any of its failings. I didn't really feel like there were a whole lot of failings. I had a couple of minor issues with the alien replacement for Alara Katan on the bridge as the security officer. Wasn't really finding that all that funny, to be honest. But the whole rest of the episode was beautiful and had twists and turns, surprises that I was, not really expecting. And it was just kind of sort of heartbreaking because I knew it was coming. I didn't know how soon into the second season it would come, that Alara would be, for all intents and purposes, leaving the Orville. Because for those who may be confused, may not have been following the news about the series, there were some scheduling conflicts for Halston Sage, the actress who plays Alara Katan, as they were ramping up pre-production for Season 2. She was filming a movie, and she wasn't going to be available, for a time, and so they have, for all intents and purposes, at least hopefully temporarily only, written out her character. And they did so in such a heartening, tugging at the heartstrings way. The performances all around in this episode were spectacular. They were par excellence, from Robert Picardo to John Billingsley from Star Trek Enterprise, Dr. Phlox. The two doctors and me, Dr. Phlox and the Doctor. Not to be confused with the Doctor Who Doctor, which is also the Doctor. The EMH Doctor, from Star Trek Voyager. For me, as a fan of Star Trek Enterprise, it is my second all-time favorite Star Trek series. To see John Billingsley in this episode, as soon as I saw his name in the credits, I got goosebumps. I was like, oh, hell yes, that's awesome. But therein lies his performance was the big-time thing I did not see coming, the big time shock, the twist that I didn't see coming, and I wasn't exactly sure where they were going with it. Like when he and his wife show up, and there's all the conversation about his son, and I was like, oh, is this kind of like a backdoor way of trying to maybe set up Alara, that kind of thing, and then it took a more dramatic turn because you see Alara sort of reacting like, she's kind of feeling like a third wheel, like, she's kind of embarrassed that here her parents are putting their other daughter up on a pedestal in front of, these supposed neighbors, but they're not really talking as spectacularly about Alara herself while she's sitting right there. And so I was like, oh, it's more for the dramatic beat, the tension, because her homecoming is not an illustrious one. It's not really a very happy one because of the estrangement and the lack of communication between she and her father, most especially, who really doesn't appreciate that she has her own path, her own sights that she wants to follow in her life. And that's something I could highly relate to with grandparents who found out about my interest in being an artist, being potentially, in my youth, I thought I wanted to be a cartoonist or an animator before I found a love for writing. And there was a lot of constructive, air quotes, criticism on their part that wasn't very supportive. It was more like, well, if you want to do this, you have to do it this way. Otherwise, you're not going to be a success. Otherwise, you won't make money. Otherwise, all that kind of stuff. There were always asterisks involved with whatever I wanted to do when they would find out about it. And I didn't feel supported. I felt much more put upon, and, the respect did not go both ways. It wasn't a two-way street. So I could highly, highly relate to that relationship dynamic between Alara and her father. And it was one of those things where the dramatic tension of that, the characterization, the interpersonal interconnectivity there, or a lack thereof, as it were, because they were so estranged and so did not see eye to eye, was absolutely compelling. And it comes on the coattails of being welcomed into Saleya, this world, which it's funny that it's called Saleya, because there is in the Star Trek annals, Mount Saleya of Vulcan, And the thing I thought of immediately when they go to Saleya, when they are bringing Alara back after, they realize what's happening to her with the sort of, succumbing to the lesser gravity of the Earth gravity and everything like that, and getting her arm broken, which I thought was a really cool nod to what happens later with Ed, where his legs get broken under, the tremendous gravity of Saleya as a planet. I thought it was a good callback because he's up and, running around the Orville again without a problem as soon as they get him back to the ship. And they had already sort of telegraphed that with the doctor healing Alara's broken arm very easily, as the medical technology allows for. But as soon as they brought her back to the planet and we're seeing the vistas and the cityscape and everything, it really kind of reminded me of the Vulcan as it was portrayed in Star Trek, the animated series. Now, I know Vulcan, for those who may not be familiar, Vulcan is considered a sort of desert planet, if you will. Not quite Tatooine-esque in the Star Wars universe, but there are large, majestic buildings and cities, and there are desert plains and things of that sort. And there was just an awe and a majesty to it that harkened back to me. When you see the horse-like animal, I forget what they called it, and then Alara has the dream sequence of riding it down the beach. It reminded me of a specific episode from the animated series where Spock, it's a time travel episode, and Spock has to go back in time to sort of correct his own life. And the name of the episode escapes me. It'll be down here on the bottom of the screen, for you. But those vistas, the cityscape and everything like that, the special effects there, it was just glorious. It was par excellence, much as I say the performances were. And the episode, it drew me in from right away, because I realized very quickly the direction the story was taking, that this was, for all intents and purposes, where we were going to be losing Halston Sage, where we were going to be losing the character of Alara Katan. Hopefully only at least for a time, but I know that there is another actress that is kind of sort of going to be replacing her as the security chief. I remember hearing a while back. I don't remember who it is, and I don't know if she's going to, show up as soon as the next episode, because I haven't seen, the preview for the next one as yet. But when that shock comes, when that twist comes where the revelation that John Billingsley and his wife in the episode are like the bad guys, they're out for revenge, they want to punish Picardo's character for having dismantled the career of their son, I felt like a smack upside the head. Like suddenly the whole tone of the episode had shifted, and I didn't like it at first. I was like, oh wow, this just let me down all of a sudden. Like I was seething because I was excited, I was happy, I liked the dramatic tension and the performances, and it wasn't anything overly shocking, overly crazy, apart from the comedic elements dealing with the alien, who is supposed to be taking over for Alara on the bridge and everything, which I didn't like. Everything else about the episode had completely drew me in, and I was thoroughly loving and just, almost salivating over just the gorgeousness of it, the writing, the characterization, the performances, the way the world looked and everything. And then so as soon as you get Billingsley's turn, his character turn, by wanting, Picardo to put his hand in the boiling sauce, I was just shocked, and suddenly, it was like a completely different animal, a completely different beast, and I was like, I don't like this. I don't like this sudden shift, this turn. But they very quickly won me back as I started to realize what was happening, and it was explained why Billingsley's character and his wife were doing this. And again, the performances were still par excellence. Billingsley himself, he is such a great actor, whether it's in genre work or whether it's just in straight drama, things of that nature. And even his real-life wife is a good actress, who I know most notably from the series Chuck, which was a favorite of mine. But, having Robert Picardo and John Billingsley, the two former doctors from two former Star Trek series, going head-to-head so viciously, and of course, Picardo's character is much more reserved and shocked and scared, terrified as anyone would be. And the threat against Alara's family, and seeing Alara just, being sort of dead-legged and wanting to do something. it drew me back in, and as you know, we realized that Ed is coming back down because they found some new information that could help Alara out, endangering him when he gets shot in the chest, point blank, because, you know, Billingsley's characters had enough of Picardo trying to get, you know, Ed to go away. I was like blown away. I was like, whoa, and he goes flying. Ed goes flying. You know, he's wearing that like anti-gravity suit, which looked like something out of Pacific Rim, which was awesome. Just everything about the design and the production of this show. This episode it's my favorite of this season, even though I loathe it, as I said at the start of the video, because we lose Alara. You know, this is where Halston Sage takes a bow for a time, hopefully. Only a temporary time, at least, as I continue to repeat. And it was fantastic. I mean, you know, once everything is said and done, she has handed Billingsley and wife in the show their asses, taken care of them, and there is that heart-wrenching but utmost satisfying scene between Picardo and you know, his daughter, saying, I never knew you. I never understood who you were. I never gave you a chance. I never gave it a chance to try to have any kind of simpatico, to try to understand you and appreciate your gifts, your talents, and the path you have set before you, which is so different from my own. You know, he had such a tunnel vision worldview. And this is something very relatable for a lot of people. You know, whether it's parents, grandparents, whatever, friends, acquaintances, there will be people in your life that will have a completely different worldview than you. And sometimes that is overreaching to, they think they have an idea of how better your life could be if only you did this, if only you went that way, if only you went back to school. And more often than not, that's not a choice for them to make. They don't have a right to say, you know. It was absolutely compelling. And it blew me away. And of course, toward the end, again, the bittersweetness of Alara's goodbyes when she has that, you know, meeting with the captain, with Ed, and explains herself, why she's doing this. Her walking down the lonely corridor, the empty corridor, and I was like, oh, they're not going to give her a send-off. But then, of course, they do in the shuttle bay, and she hugs everybody but Isaac. You know, he broke her arm in the earlier part of the episode. He doesn't deserve one. But, you know, like the goodbyes there, seeing Halston, the actress, crying, probably very real in the moment, Kelly as well, Adrienne Palicki, and just the emotions were utmost on high. And I did get misty-eyed, I'm not ashamed to admit. And just that last bittersweet sigh of relief in a sense, because the drama and the tension was finally uplifted, where we find out the gift that she gives to Ed, the jar of pickles. You know, I mean, the thing that's great about this episode is, like, even if you hadn't sat through the first season, you get the dramatic tension, you get the characterization, you can understand it. It is benefited if you have the previous familiarity with the characters and season one, and you have a familiarity with Alara Katan, the character, and the performances by Halston Sage, and everybody as they interacted and played off each other, bounded off each other, and everything like that. But that's the great thing about this episode. It isn't absolutely necessary, but if you do have that familiarity, a little sort of nod, a little in-joke like a jar of pickles, which goes back to the first thing Ed ever asked of Alara Katan. Can you help me open this jar of pickles? You know, or however he said it. It was just an almost perfect episode. Again, the thing that really sort of stood out to me was more sort of comedic, you know, a comedic beat with the alien replacement for Alara. I didn't really appreciate it. I didn't really find it that humorous. And then, like I said, that initial beat of the twist, the revelation of John Billingsley's character as, you know, a criminal. He and his wife coming, not at first to kill Picardo, more so to have him rebuke a statement he made that had, you know, caused a controversy for the life of their son, who ended up committing suicide. They put the blame on Picardo's character, Alara's father, and then to be threatening him with torture, putting his hand in the boiling sauce, threatening to cut the finger off of, his eldest daughter, all of that stuff. I mean, it was just, the writing was exemplary, and it's a prime example of the best aspects of the first season that I championed all through the first season. The dramatic characterization, the character interplay. I mean, it was just amazing in this episode. It touched upon all of those aspects that I loved from the first season. And so there's not really a whole hell of a lot else I can say about it. I loved it and I loathed it. I loved it for all of its exemplary writing and performances and characterization, the look, the awe and majesty of Saleya, of this world, and with the exception of a couple of little, beats that I didn't really care for, it was just a great hour of entertainment. So I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below. If you watched this episode of The Orville, what you thought of it, love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and would like to consider supporting my channel, I'd like to ask if you would have a look at my PayPal contribution link posted both in the description as well as the comments below, which affords you opportunities such as, Patreon does, as far as setting up a monthly contribution, a one-time only kind of thing. You could send me a personal message alongside a contribution requesting topics I may discuss in the future, ask for shout-outs, make recommendations of things I might check out, and, anything you saw fit to send my way would be 2 thumbs up for me and just secure my longevity on YouTube. And so yeah, otherwise that'll be pretty much it for me on this. Hope this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.